From the beginning, his mother knew that he was no ordinary person. Prior to his birth, a heavenly figure appeared to her, announcing that her son would not be a mere mortal, but would himself be divine. This prophecy was confirmed by the miraculous character of his birth, a birth accompanied by supernatural signs. The boy was already recognized as a spiritual authority in his youth. His discussions with recognized experts showed his superior knowledge of all things religious. As an adult, he left home to engage in an itinerant preaching ministry. He went from village to town with his message of good news, proclaiming that people should forego their concerns for the material things of this life, such as how they should dress and what they should eat. They should instead be concerned with their eternal souls. He gathered around him a number of disciples who were amazed by his teaching and his flawless character. They became convinced that he was no ordinary man, but was the Son of God. Their faith received striking confirmation in the miraculous things that he did. He could reportedly predict the future, heal the sick, cast out demons, and raise the dead. Not everyone proved friendly, however. At the end of his life, his enemies trumped up charges against him, and he was placed on trial before Roman authorities for crimes against the state. Even after he departed this realm, however, he did not forsake his devoted followers. Some claimed that he had ascended bodily into heaven. Others said he had appeared to them alive afterward, that they had talked with him and touched him, and become convinced that he could not be bound by death. A number of his followers spread the good news about this man, recounting what they had seen him say and do. Eventually, some of these accounts came to be written down in books that circulated throughout the empire. This holy man lived in the 1st century CE. But I doubt that you've ever read them. In fact, I suspect you have never heard the name of this miracle-working Son of God. The man I have been referring to is the great Neo-Pythagorean teacher and pagan Apollonius of Tyana, a worshipper of the Roman gods, whose life and teachings are still available for us in the writings of his later 3rd century follower, Philostratus, in his book, The Life of Apollonius. Apollonius lived at about the same time of Jesus, even though they never met. The reports about their lives were in many ways similar. At a later time, Jesus' followers argued that Jesus was the miracle-working Son of God and that Apollonius was an impostor, a magician, and a fraud. Perhaps not surprisingly, Apollonius' followers made just the opposite claim, asserting that he was the miracle-working Son of God and that Jesus was a fraud. The New Testament, a historical introduction to early Christian writings, by Bart D. Ehrman, page 19 through 21. Daimons, demons in Greco-Roman antiquity.
And they were all amazed, so that they questioned among themselves, saying, "What is this? A new teaching. With authority he commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." And at once his fame spread everywhere throughout all the surrounding region of Galilee. Mark 1:27.
Thanks to the wonderful work by Dr. Wendy Cotter, Miracles and Greco-Roman Antiquity, a source book for the study of New Testament miracle stories, we will help you explore the times around the rise of the movement called Christianity, with its hero god, Jesus, doing very much the same things that were already in the air in the world around the 1st century. Whether one is looking at miraculous healings, as our last documentary shows, several gods and heroes before, during, and after the time of Jesus from the Greco-Roman world healing the blind, deaf, crippled, and raising the dead, just like Jesus. Or, if you're interested in the strange narratives of casting out demons, this series is giving you primary sources from ancient authors who share the beliefs of people in this period. My goal isn't to falsify a narrative from the New Testament. Rather, my goal is to level the playing field by bringing Christianity down to the world from which it was birthed. Apologetics often wants to insulate the New Testament from any non-Jewish sources, and this is becoming a stumbling block for an accurate assessment of the materials. Jesus wasn't the only healer, nor was he the only guy running around supposedly casting out demons. Many would like to ignore those other sources, or hand-wave the claims from other sources. Myth vision is like your modern-day Lucian of Samosata. We try to bring humor, critical thinking, and skepticism as we engage in much of what is considered superstitions by evaluating whether these claims are purely literary, serving a story or narrative function. Was there really an itinerant preacher named Jesus or Apollonius running around like a shaman casting out demons? Or is there a bit of both happening? We will ultimately never know with absolute certainty, but let us begin our exploration. Diving into the world of exorcisms is a bit like stepping into a magic circle where your perspective shapes what you see. Harold Remus, in his exploration of 2nd century miracle squabbles between pagans and Christians, points out that what you make of Jesus' exorcism gigs could range from witnessing divine rescue operations to suspecting dark arts or even outright fraud. It all boils down to whose glasses you're looking through. Consider an exorcism approved by the critics as the real deal and a bona fide act of heroism. The story can take on different shades depending on the cosmic scenery the narrator has pointed for us. Let's say the backdrop is apocalyptic, like the ultimate showdown between good and evil is just around the corner. In this scenario, an exorcism by Jesus gets the blockbuster treatment, heralding the curtain call for Satan's reign of earthly terror. But strip away those apocalyptic vibes, and you're left with a Jesus exorcism that blends into the everyday supernatural hustle and bustle of the Greco-Roman world. To really get a grip on the spectrum of meanings an exorcism can conjure, you've got to be acquainted with the local demonology, be it the garden variety Greco-Roman spooks or the heavyweight contenders from Jewish apocalyptic thrillers in the day and age of the rise of the New Testament literature. Each brings its own flavor to the exorcism tale, seasoning our understanding of what's at stake when spirits get booted out. Simply put, there are several accounts of exorcisms from other figures before, during, and after the time of the stories of Jesus. It was in the air during this time in history. Truth be told, this idea of exorcisms spans back all the way into ancient Mesopotamia, with Sumerian demons being expelled at the name of their wise sage, Adapa. But this video isn't giving the long history of demons, rather sources showing that Jesus was among many other figures who supposedly had the power to exorcise demons. So are these exorcists worthy of our worship now that they can perform miracles and cast out demons? Of course not. These sources are for sure literary works, and at best claims of what these figures did. They are claims which are just as plausible as the Jesus claims. In my book, extremely unlikely and more legendary. But when someone tries to put the New Testament claims above these others, they are forced to have to special plead for Jesus and downplay these other figures. I cannot disprove these things never happened, but we can have extremely high confidence that we are dealing with crafted stories with a literary thrust which looks more crafted than actual history. How do we sweep away the legend and literary nature of these stories to find bedrock? What if these stories have no historical foundation, but are just that, well-crafted stories about Jesus decades after the guy is off the scene? Was Jesus even an exorcist? Possibly yes, but he wouldn't have been the only one. We have several in the historical record. Imagine how many exorcists were running around who never made it into the history books. What if one of these exorcists were the true Son of God and we got the wrong guy to worship? Teasing, of course. The nature and identity of daimons in non-Jewish sources of Greco-Roman antiquity. Frederick E. Brink, S.J., takes us on a moonlit journey through the pages of demonology from the dawn of folklore to the 3rd century CE in his captivating study In the Light of the Moon, Demonology in the Early Imperial Period. His exploration uncovers the rich picture of beliefs surrounding the enigmatic daemon. Revealing a term so versatile, pinning it down to a single meaning would be a fool's errand. Context, Brink convincingly argues, is king when it comes to understanding what a daemon signifies in any given narrative. The plot thickens with Plutarch, a luminary of the 1st and 2nd centuries, 45 to 125 CE, who credits Hesiod with drawing the celestial line of scrimmage, separating the daemons from the gods and assigning them a lifespan that would make any tortoise green with envy. 9,720 years, to be exact. But this demarcation is just the beginning. The term daemon flits about, donning a plethora of roles that could dizzy even the most seasoned mythologists. At its most encompassing, spirit seems to be the word that best captures the essence of these beings. These spirits can be anything from divine messengers, cosmic middlemen, if you will, to rebellious forces at odds with the gods. They might guard humans like celestial bodyguards, or haunt them like spiteful specters. Some are akin to cheerfully departed souls, while others are more in the vein of bitter ghosts, harboring a grudge against the living. In the end, Brink's essay illuminates the complex and shifting landscape of ancient beliefs about the supernatural, where daemons play a role as varied and vibrant as life itself. Plutarch, circa 50 to 120 CE. Plutarch, a towering intellectual figure of the early 2nd century CE, offers a treasure trove of insights into the spiritual and philosophical beliefs that permeated the Mediterranean world during the Roman Empire. His work spans a rich array of subjects, but it's in De Defectu Oraculorum, On the Decline of Oracles, found within the pages of 415a to 418d, that we encounter a particularly intriguing discourse on the fading voices of the ancient oracles, a phenomenon that puzzled many of his contemporaries. This narrative unfolds in an evocative setting, a group of erudite friends gathering in the baths at the temple, perhaps enveloped in steam and the echoes of philosophical debate. It's here, amidst the backdrop of Delphi, once the epicenter of divine prophecy, that they ponder the silence that has befallen the oracles, which in bygone eras served as channels for the gods' voices to the mortal world. Enter Cleombrotus of Sparta, not merely a man of wealth, but a voracious seeker of wisdom with a passport stamped by the known world. It is he who steps into the conversation with a perspective shaped by his extensive travels and unquenchable thirst for knowledge. His contributions to the dialogue reflect a broader examination of the spiritual mechanics behind the oracle's silence, inviting readers into a contemplation of divine presence and absence in a changing world. Plutarch's references to daemons, particularly in his Moralia 350e, and the exploration of their possession effects in his Lives, specifically in the story of Marcellus 20.5f, further enrich this conversation. Through these writings, Plutarch not only documents the beliefs of his time, but also engages deeply with them, offering a window into the complex interplay between humanity and the divine, the seen and the unseen, in the vast world of imperial Mediterranean culture. Now let's dive into what Plutarch writes pertaining to this philosophical discussion, acting like flies on the wall listening in. Many perplexities are explained by the teaching that a race of demigods exist between the gods and humanity.
Plutarch, They put the case well who say that Plato, by his discovery of the element underlying all created qualities, which is now called matter and nature, has relieved philosophers of many perplexities. But, as it seems to me, those persons have resolved more and greater perplexities, who have set the race of demigods midway between gods and men, and have discovered a force to draw together, in a way, and to unite our common fellowship. Whether this doctrine comes from the wise men of the cult of Zoroaster, or whether it is Thracian and harks back to Orpheus, or is Egyptian or Phrygian, as we may infer from observing that many things connected with death and mourning in the rites of both lands are combined in the ceremonies so fervently celebrated there.
Heroes who die can become demigods, and demigods heroes.
Plutarch. Among the Greeks, Homer, moreover, appears to use both names in common, and sometimes to speak of the gods as demigods, daimonas. But Hesiod was the first to set forth clearly and distinctly 4 classes of rational beings: gods, demigods, heroes in this order, and last of all, men. And as a sequence to this, apparently, he postulates his transmutation, the golden race passing selectively into many good divinities, and the demigods into heroes. Others postulate a transmutation for bodies and souls alike, in the same manner in which water is seen to be generated from earth, air from water, and fire from air, as their substance is borne upward. Even so, from men into heroes, and from heroes into demigods, the better souls obtain their transmutation. But from the demigods, a few souls still, in the long reach of time because of supreme excellence, come, after being purified, to share completely in divine qualities.
If souls lose control of themselves, they can again be clothed with earthly bodies.
Plutarch. But with some of these souls it comes to pass that they do not maintain control over themselves, but yield to temptation, and are again clothed with mortal bodies, and have a dim and darkened life, like mist or vapor. The Loeb edition supplies a note on Hesiod's calculation that a demigod lives 9,720 years, and a discussion of how to interpret one generation. Resistance to the Stoic theory of conflagration.
It is impossible to imagine the cosmos without the daemons.
Plutarch. Now, if the air that is between the earth and the moon were to be removed and withdrawn, the unity and consociation of the universe would be destroyed, since there would be an empty and unconnected space in the middle. And in just the same way, those who refuse to leave us, the race of demigods, make the relations of gods and men remote and alien by doing away with the interpretative and ministering nature, as Plato has called it, or else are they forcius to a disorderly confusion of all things, in which we bring the god into men's emotions and activities, drawing him down to our needs, as the women of Thessaly are said to draw down the moon.
Just as with human beings, so too among the demigods, there are different degrees of excellence.
Plutarch. For as among men, so also among the demigods, there are different degrees of excellence, and in some there is a weak and dim remainder of the emotional and irrational, a survival, as it were, while in others this is excessive and hard to stifle. Of these things there are, in many places, sacrifices, ceremonies, and legends, which preserve and jealously guard vestiges and tokens, embodied here and there in their fabric.
The gloomy practices on festival days are meant to ward off evil spirits.
Plutarch. As for festivals and sacrifices, which may be compared with ill-omened and gloomy days, in which occur the eating of raw flesh, rending of victims, fasting and beating of breasts, and again in many places scurrilous language at the shrines, frenzy, and shoutings of throngs, in excitement with tumultuous tossings of heads in the air. I should say that these acts are not performed for any god, but are soothing and appeasing rites for the averting of evil spirits.
A possessed man, demons affect the signs of madness, such as shrieking, running, and nakedness.
Plutarch. Just as they were ready to arrest him, Nicias, an assembly of the citizens was held, and here Nicias, right in the midst of some advice that he was giving to the people, suddenly threw himself upon the ground, and after a little while, amid the silence and consternation which naturally prevailed, lifted his head, turned it about, and spoke in a low and trembling voice, little by little, raising and sharpening its tones. And when he saw the whole audience struck dumb with horror, he tore off his mantle, rent his tunic, and leaping up half naked, ran towards the exit from the theatre, crying out that he was pursued by the mothers. No man venturing to lay hands upon him, or even to come in his way, out of superstitious fear, but all avoiding him, he ran out to the gate of the city, freely using all the cries and gestures that would become a man possessed and crazed.
Apollonius of Madara, 123 to 190 CE. Apollonius of Madara, a figure of considerable intellect and creativity, navigated a world where the boundaries between philosophy, poetry, and the supernatural frequently blurred. His life took a dramatic turn in 161 CE when he was elevated to the esteemed position of chief priest in the province of Carthage, a role that underscored his prominence in the religious and intellectual circles of his time. However, this ascent came after a period of significant personal turmoil. Just 6 years before his appointment, Apollonius found himself entangled in a legal drama that could well have been lifted from one of his own works. He was accused of employing magic, a serious charge in the Roman world, with the aim of winning the affection and hand of a wealthy widow. The implications of such accusations went far beyond personal scandal. They threatened his freedom, his reputation, and his very life. In response to these charges, Apollonius crafted a defense that not only showcased his eloquence and wit, but also his deep understanding of philosophy, law, and the natural world. His speech, preserved as the Apologia, also known as Prosa de Magia, or Discourse on Magic, offers a fascinating glimpse into the interplay of magic, society, and personal integrity in the 2nd century CE. The following passage is taken from Apollonius's Apologia on the matter. All divination and miracles of magicians are controlled by daimons.
Apollonius of Madara, Apologia 439. I believe Plato when he asserts that there are certain divine powers holding a position and possessing a character midway between gods and men, and that all divination and the miracles of magicians are controlled by them.
Celsus, Origins contra Celsum, 177 to 180 CE. It is sorcerers who deal with daemons, blow away diseases, and invoke the souls of the heroes only for base gain.
Celsus, Origin, contra Celsum. Celsus puts them, the Jesus miracles, on a level with the works of sorcerers who profess to do wonderful miracles, and the accomplishments of those who are taught by the Egyptians, who for a few obols make known their sacred law in the middle of the marketplace and drive demons out of men and blow away diseases and invoke the souls of heroes.
Celsus, the 2nd century critic of Christianity, famously equated the miracles performed by Jesus with the acts of sorcerers and magicians. As recorded in polemical text against early Christian claims, his critique illuminates a broader cultural skepticism towards supernatural interventions, especially those performed by figures outside the established religious and social norms of the Roman Empire. By placing Jesus' miracles alongside the feats of sorcerers and the esoteric practices of Egyptian magicians, Celsus not only challenges the uniqueness and divinity of these miracles, but also embeds them with a wider context of magical practices prevalent in the ancient world. It would be wonderful if we had earlier sources of critics like Celsus to Christianity. I guess one could put Lucian in that category, but it's very interesting to see Celsus jabbing at the claims of Christians by paving the well-worn path of Greco-Roman tradition, which was before Christians came along with their hero, Jesus. We should ask ourselves questions like, is Celsus accurate in his criticisms of Christianity? Are we just following the winners of history, meaning church history and their perception, instead of listening to the critics of a superstition that recently rose in history, which co-opts the very same mythical and magical tropes already established in the Greco-Roman world? The term sorcerer serves as a powerful pejorative, conjuring images of deceit and manipulation, and is strategically used by Celsus to undermine the legitimacy of the exorcist's work. The choice of language reflects a common rhetorical tactic. framing the unfamiliar or foreign as a source of dubious knowledge or practices. In this case, attributing the origins of black magic to Egyptians, this not only serves to exoticize and otherize these practices, but also implies a corruption of Roman virtues through the influence of foreign, suspicious healers. Celsus's critique extends beyond mere association with sorcery. He condemns the commercialization of sacred acts, accusing practitioners of profaning spiritual matters for personal gain. This accusation taps into a broader concern about the integrity of religious and spiritual leaders, suggesting that the commodification of divine interventions undermines their authenticity and sanctity. Practically, he sees these Christians as ancient Benny Hinns selling their spiritual matters. Furthermore, Celsus's grouping of various supernatural activities, exorcising demons, curing diseases through spells, and invoking the spirits of heroes under a single umbrella of critique, highlights the fluidity between different forms of ancient supernatural practices. This amalgamation serves to diminish the perceived sanctity of these acts, equating them with necromancy and other forms of dark magic. It underscores the skepticism towards the mingling of disease, demonic possession, and sacred divination, suggesting a pervasive intertwining of health, spirituality, and the supernatural in ancient thought. Funny thing about this is, the same criticisms towards the Christians is reversed towards the Greek and Roman gods and heroes. Celsus's arguments provide a window into the complex landscape of ancient religious and magical practice or beliefs, where the boundaries between divinity, magic, and charlatanism were often contested. His critique reflects broader debates about the nature of spiritual authority, the legitimacy of supernatural interventions, and the ethical implications of monetizing sacred knowledge. Let's turn now to Lucian of Samosata. Lucian of Samosata, 120 to 190 CE. Lucian of Samosata, a master satirist whose pen was as sharp as his wit, remains one of the most intriguing figures of classical antiquity. Born in the eastern reaches of the Roman Empire, Lucian's works often reflect the cultural and religious diversity of his homeland, offering a unique perspective on the complexities of life in Syria and the broader Near East. He would be in a position to know what the common folk of these regions practiced and believed. One of Lucian's notable contributions to literature is The Lover of Lies, a work that gleefully dives into the world of the supernatural, the miraculous, and the downright unbelievable. Through this text, Lucian not only entertains but also critiques the gullibility and superstition he perceives around him. His skepticism towards the miraculous is embodied in the character of Ion, who chastises another character for doubting the existence of the supernatural, specifically referring to a Syrian exorcist's ability to cast out daimons. This narrative choice is particularly fascinating, as it provides a window into the cultural interactions and tensions of Lucian's time. The reference to a Syrian exorcist is significant, highlighting the cross-cultural beliefs in spirits and their exorcism that were prevalent across the Roman Empire. Lucian's satirical lens does not spare these beliefs. Instead, he uses them as a vehicle to explore themes of truth, belief, and the human penchant for embracing the fantastical. Lucian's work stands as a testament to the enduring power of satire to challenge societal norms and beliefs. Through The Lover of Lies, he invites his readers to question the nature of truth and the foundations of their convictions, all while navigating the cultural and religious practices that defined the ancient Mediterranean world. These sources throughout this documentary are windows into the ancient world. It is ridiculous to doubt everything. What about those who free the daemon possessed from their terrors?
Lucian, the lover of lies. You act ridiculously, said Ion, to doubt everything. For my part, I should like to ask you what you say to those who free possessed men from their terrors, by exorcising the spirits so manifestly. I need not discuss this. Everyone knows about the Syrian from Palestine, the adept in it. How many he takes in hand who fall down in the light of the moon, and roll their eyes and fill their mouths with foam. Nevertheless, he restores them to health and sends them away normal in mind, delivering them from their straits for a large fee. When he stands beside them as they lie there and asks, "Whence came you into his body?" The patient himself is silent, but the spirit answers in Greek or in the language of whatever foreign country he comes from, telling how and whence he entered into the man. Whereupon, by adjuring the spirit, and if he does not obey, threatening him, he drives him out. Indeed, I actually saw one coming out, black and smoky in color.
Lucian's portrayal of exorcism in The Lover of Lies cleverly navigates the fine line between societal critique and the depiction of prevalent beliefs in ancient society. Through the lens of satire, Lucian reveals not only the widespread acceptance and popularity of exorcists, but also hints at a more cynical view of their motivations and the credulity of their audience. The demand for monetary compensation by the exorcist, as highlighted by Lucian, serves as a critical commentary on the commercialization of religious and supernatural practices. This detail is crucial as it suggests that the exorcist's primary motive might be financial gain rather than altruistic spiritual liberation. Lucian uses this point to subtly question the authenticity of the exorcist's powers and the sincerity of their intentions. Meanwhile, the character Ion represents the perspective of those who wholeheartedly believe in the power of exorcisms. To Ion, and presumably to many in Lucian's society, the exorcist's ability to cast out daimons is seen as a genuine liberation from suffering and fear. This belief in the exorcist's power to heal symbolizes a deep-seated need for relief from the unexplained and the supernatural that plagued individuals in the ancient world. By juxtaposing these viewpoints, Lucian not only mocks the gullibility of those who uncritically accept the exorcist's claims, but also reflects on the human condition and the universal search for solutions to life's mysteries and maladies. His satirical approach serves as a mirror to his society, revealing both the exploitation of belief for personal gain and the genuine desire for healing and understanding in the face of the unknown. Through this portrayal, Lucian invites his readers to reflect on the nature of belief, skepticism, and the power dynamics at play in the transactions between those who claim supernatural abilities and those who seek their aid. Diogenes Laertius, circa 250 CE. Diogenes Laertius, an enigmatic figure in the history of classical literature, is primarily known for his monumental work, The Lives of Eminent Philosophers. This collection serves as a crucial source of information on the lives, teachings, and anecdotes of ancient philosophers, ranging from the pre-Socratics to those of the Hellenistic period. His detailed accounts begin with Thales and conclude with Epicurus, covering a broad spectrum of philosophical traditions and schools of thought. Given the scope of Diogenes Laertius' work, which does not extend into the era of Neoplatonism, a philosophical movement that gained prominence in the 3rd century CE, scholars infer that he must have lived before this period. This lack of reference to Neoplatonic philosophy suggests a dating of Diogenes Laertius' life to the early to mid-2nd century CE. However, without direct evidence of his existence outside his writings, much of his life remains shrouded in mystery, and any attempt to pinpoint his dates more precisely relies heavily on contextual clues within his work. In Book 8 of the Lives of Eminent Philosophers, Diogenes Laertius delves into the life and philosophy of Pythagoras, offering insights into the doctrines traditionally ascribed to this seminal figure and his followers. This section is particularly valuable for its portrayal of Pythagorean philosophy, which encompassed not only mathematical and cosmological theories, but also ethical and metaphysical teachings. Through Diogenes Laertius's narrative, readers gain access to a blend of historical facts, legends, and philosophical principles that have been attributed to Pythagoras and his school, reflecting the broader intellectual and cultural milieu of ancient Greece. Impure souls may not approach the pure, but are bound by the Furies.
Diogenes Laertius, Pythagoras, lives of eminent philosophers. Hermes is the steward of souls, and for that reason is called Hermes the escorter, Hermes the keeper of the gate, and Hermes of the underworld, since it is he who brings in the souls from their bodies, both by land and sea. And the pure are taken into the uppermost region, but the impure akathartas are not permitted to approach the pure or each other, but are bound by the Furies in bonds, unbreakable.
The whole air is full of souls called genii or daimons, or heroes who send people dreams and signs of future diseases.
Diogenes Laertius, Pythagoras, lives of philosophers. The whole air is full of souls which are called genii daimones, or heroes. These are they who send men dreams and signs of future disease and health, and not to men alone, but to sheep also and cattle as well. And it is to them that purifications and lustrations, all divination, omens and the like, have reference.
Papyrus Berylinensis. Daemons are capable of freezing waters so they can run over them.
Papyrus Berylinensis. Hey, the daemon will quickly freeze rivers and seas, and in such a way that you can run over them firmly.
Berylinensis and the biblical account of Jesus walking on water as found in Mark 6:45-52 highlights distinct conceptions of supernatural power within ancient text. In the Papyrus Berylinensis, the daemon's power is depicted as an alteration of the natural environment, requiring a transformation of water into a solid state to enable passage across it. This act of freezing large bodies of water showcases a direct manipulation of the physical world, emphasizing the daemon's control over natural elements. On the other hand, Jesus' act of walking on water does not involve altering the water's physical state. Instead, it is presented as a miraculous ability to tread upon the water in its natural liquid form. This difference underscores a fundamental distinction in the nature of the powers attributed to daemons and to Jesus. Jesus' miracle is portrayed as the direct defiance of natural laws, a testament to his divine authority and the transcendent nature of his powers. It is an act that goes beyond mere manipulation of the environment, suggesting a level of sovereignty over the created order. Exorcism stories from non-Jewish sources of Greco-Roman antiquity. Step right into the captivating realm of ancient Greco-Roman exorcism tales, where the supernatural is just another part of everyday life. Forget about authorship. We're diving into these stories based on their themes and juicy details, organizing them like a curator arranges artifacts in an exhibit by their fascinating features rather than their creators. Each story is set in its own spotlight under a subheading that hints at the drama to unfold, making it easy for you to navigate through this maze of ancient mystique. And while we tread through these tales of old, we'll occasionally glance over at the miraculous acts attributed to Jesus, drawing a line or two that connects across cultures. It's a journey that promises not just a scholarly exploration, but a witty and entertaining stroll through history's shadowy, spellbinding corners. Parents petition the exorcism of their child.
Apollonius of Tyana, circa 80-98 CE. Apollonius of Tyana was an itinerant holy man, teacher, and healer who was active especially in the Flavian period, 69-98 CE. We rely on his biography, The Life of Apollonius of Tyana, written by the 3rd century Neo-Pythagorean philosopher Philostratus, for the details of his life and activities. It has been argued that Philostratus fabricated these stories to contest the Christians. This argument deserves a lengthy treatment for which there is no room here. However, the most obvious response is that there are too many embarrassing features about Apollonius's miracles for Neo-Pythagoreans to suggest that they were invented by the Neo-Pythagoreans. But let us notice here that if they did copy the Jesus exorcisms, it is a clear signal that they did not recognize anything about the Jesus miracles that supported a cosmology as odd as apocalypticism.
A mother petitions for the exorcism of a soldier's ghost enamored of her son.
Philostratus, 170 CE, Life of Apollonius of Tyana. This discussion, Apollonius' response to his Indian hosts about the relation of the sea to the earth, chapter 37, was interrupted by the appearance among the sages of the messenger, bringing in certain Indians who were in want of aid. And he brought forward a poor woman who interceded in behalf of her child, who was, she said, a boy of 16 years of age, but had been, for 2 years, possessed by a devil, daimon. Now, the character of the devil was that of a mocker and a liar. Here one of the sagas are scared why she said this, and she replied, "This child of mine is extremely good-looking, and therefore the devil is amorous of him, and will not allow him to retain his reason, nor will he permit him to go to school, or to learn archery, nor even to remain at home, but drives him out into desert places. And the boy does not even retain his own voice, but speaks in a deep, hollow tone, as men do. And he looks at you with other eyes rather than with his own. As for myself, I weep over all this, and I tear my cheeks, and I rebuke my son so far as I well may. But he does not know me, and I made up my mind to repair hither. Indeed, I planned to do so a year ago. Only the demon discovered himself using my child as a mask, and what he told me was this, that he was the ghost of a man who fell long ago in battle, but that at death he was passionately attached to his wife. Now he had been dead for only 3 days when his wife insulted their union by marrying another man. And the consequence was that he had come to detest the love of women and had transferred himself wholly into this boy. But he promised, if I would only not denounce him to yourselves, to endow the child with many noble blessings. As for myself, I was influenced by these promises, but he has put me off and off for such a long time now that he has got sole control of my household, yet has no honest or true intentions. Here the sage asked afresh if the boy was at hand, and she said not, for although she had done all she could to get him to come with her, the demon had threatened her with steep places and precipices, and declared that he would kill her son. In case, she added, I hailed him hither for trial. Take courage, said the sage, for he will not slay him when he has read this. And so saying, he drew a letter out of his bosom and gave it to the woman. And the letter, it appears, was addressed to the ghost, to Eidolon, and contained threats of an alarming kind.
In this intriguing narrative, we find ourselves confronting the multifaceted nature of daemons as understood in ancient times, echoing Plutarch's belief that these spirits could tread the line between benevolence and malevolence. Here, the spotlight falls on a daemon with a vendetta, one that strips a person of their sanity, severs family ties, and leads them into desolation. Twist: this daemon is unmasked as the restless spirit of a soldier, embittered by a betrayal of the heart, his wife's haste to remarry following his death. This story weaves the haunting concept that the dead could linger, transforming into spirits with the power to harm the living. Enter Apollonius, who approaches the situation with a blend of diplomacy and boldness, kin to dealing with a particularly troublesome mortal. His weapon of choice? A letter imbued with a stern warning, aimed to banish the ghostly soldier back to the realm of the departed. This story not only explores the ancient understanding of spirits, but also showcases the unique ways in which they were confronted and appeased, drawing parallels to the biblical accounts found in Mark 9:14-29, Matthew 17:14-21, Luke 9:37-43, and Mark 7:24-30, Matthew 15:21-28. We observe a similar narrative rhythm, confrontations with beings beyond the mortal coil, though with a distinctively different approach to resolution. A point to my careful viewers: do we believe this story of Apollonius of Tyana actually happened? Ask yourself, does this story serve more of a narrative function for the reader and follower of Apollonius rather than a strict literal belief in the historicity of this account? Apply the same logic to the stories of Jesus. The exorcism of daemons, who caused their victims to harm themselves. Apollonius of Tyana. A ghost hides and leads a young man into excessive behavior. He no longer showed himself licentious, nor did he stare madly about, but he had returned to his own self as thoroughly as if he had been treated by drugs.
Philostratus, Life of Apollonius of Tyana. Now, while he was discussing the question of libations, there chanced to be present in his audience a young dandy who bore so evil a reputation for licentiousness that his conduct had long been the subject of coarse street corner songs. His home was Corcyra, and he traced his pedigree to Alcinous, the Phaeacian who entertained Odysseus. Apollonius then was talking about libations, and was urging them not to drink out of a particular cup, but to reserve it for the gods, without ever touching it, or drinking out of it. But when he also urged them to have handles on the cup, and to pour the libation over the handle, because that is the part of the cup at which men are least likely to drink. The youth burst out into loud and coarse laughter, and quite drowned his voice. Then Apollonius looked up at him and said, "It is not yourself that perpetrates this insult, but the demon, daemon, who drives you on without your knowing it." And in fact, the youth was, without knowing it, possessed by a devil daimonian. For he would laugh at things that no one else laughed at, and then he would fall to weeping for no reason at all, and he would talk and sing to himself. Now most people thought that it was the boisterous humor of youth which led him into such excesses, but he was really the mouthpiece of a devil to demonian, though it only seemed a drunken frolic in which on that occasion he was indulging. Now, when Apollonius gazed on him, the ghost to Eidolon, in him began to utter cries of fear and rage, such as one hears from people who are being branded or racked. And the ghost swore that he would leave the young man alone and never take possession of any men again. But Apollonius addressed him with anger, as a master might a shifty, rascally, and shameless slave and so on. And he ordered him to quit the young man and show by a visible sign that he had done so. "I will throw down yonder statue," said the devil, and pointed to one of the images which were in the king's portico, for there it was that the scene took place. But when the statue began by moving gently, and then fell down, it would defy anyone to describe the hubbub which arose thereat, and the way they clapped their hands with wonder. But the young man rubbed his eyes as if he had just woke up, and he looked towards the rays of the sun, and assumed a modest aspect, as all had their attention concentrated on him. For he no longer showed himself licentious, nor did he stare madly about, but he had returned to his own self, as thoroughly as if he had been treated with drugs. And he gave up his dainty dress and summery garments, and the rest of his sybaritic way of life, and he fell in love with the austerity of philosophers, and donned their cloak, and stripping off his old self modelled his life in future upon that of Apollonius.
In this story, a young man's extreme emotional turmoil stirs alarm among his acquaintances, painting a picture of a life overshadowed by a daemon, known for inciting intense emotional outbursts and violence. The turning point in this narrative is visual and dramatic, offering a clear signal to the onlookers that the young man has been liberated from his unseen tormentor. This moment of clarity is not only a spectacle for the crowd, but a deeply personal victory for the young man, who demonstrates his newfound freedom by adopting a life dedicated to philosophy, symbolizing his complete breakaway from the chaotic influence of the daemon. Apollonius emerges as a heroic figure in this story, showcasing his wisdom and courage by freeing the young man from what is described as a form of a devastating enslavement to the malevolent spirit. His approach to exorcism is not just a battle against a supernatural force, it's also a rescue mission aimed at restoring the young man's autonomy and setting him on a path of intellectual and spiritual enlightenment. This narrative invites comparison with the biblical account in Mark 5, 1-20, where a man tormented by demons is healed by Jesus. Both stories share themes of liberation and transformation, highlighting the power of higher knowledge or divine intervention to redeem individuals from the grips of dark forces. Apollonius of Tyana dispels an empusa, a hobgoblin. Apollonius realized what it was, and himself heaped abuse on the hobgoblin, and instructed his party to do the same, saying that this was the right remedy for such a visitation. And the phantasm fled away, shrieking even as a ghost do.
Philostratus, Life of Apollonius of Tyana. Having passed the Caucasus, our travelers, Apollonius and his party, say they saw men 4 cubits high, and that they were already black, and that when they passed over the river Indus they saw others 5 cubits high. But on their way to this river, our wayfarers found the following incidents worthy of notice. For they were traveling by bright moonlight when the figure of an empusa or hobgoblin appeared to them, that changed from one form into another, and sometimes it vanished into nothing. And Apollonius realized what it was, and himself heaped abuse on the hobgoblin, and instructed his party to do the same, saying that this was the right remedy for such a visitation. And the phantasm fled away, shrieking, even as ghosts do.
Apollonius of Tyana exorcises an empusa who was disguised as a beautiful woman. This is the best-known story of Apollonius, for many people are aware of it and know that the incident occurred in the center of Hellas.
Philostratus, Life of Apollonius of Tyana. Now there was in Corinth at that time a man named Demetrius, who studied philosophy and had embraced in his system all the masculine vigor of the Cynics. Of him Favorinus, in several of his own works, subsequently made the most generous mention. And his attitude towards Apollonius was exactly that, which they say Antisthenes took up towards the system of Socrates. For he followed him and was anxious to be his disciple, and was devoted to his doctrines, and converted to the side of Apollonius, the more esteemed of his own pupils. Among the latter was Menippus, a Lycian of 25, years of age, well endowed with good judgment, and of a physique so beautifully proportioned that in mien he resembled a fine and gentlemanly athlete. Now, this Menippus was supposed by most people to be loved by a foreign woman, who was good-looking and extremely dainty, and said that she was rich, although she was really, as it turned out, none of these things, but was only so in semblance. For as he was walking all alone along the road towards Cenchreae, he met with an apparition, and it was a woman who clasped his hand and declared that she had been long in love with him, and that she was a Phoenician woman and lived in a suburb of Corinth. And she mentioned the name of the particular suburb and said, "When you reach the place this evening, you will hear my voice as I sing to you, and you shall have wine such as you never before drank, and there will be no rival to disturb you, and we 2 beautiful beings will live together." The youth consented to this, for although he was in general a strenuous philosopher, he was nevertheless susceptible to the tender passion. And he visited her in the evening, and for the future constantly sought her company as his darling, for he did not yet realize that she was a mere apparition. Then Apollonius looked over Menippus, as a sculptor might do, and sketched an outline of the youth and examined him. And having observed his foibles, he said, "You are a fine youth, and are hunted by fine women. But in this case, you are cherishing a serpent, and a serpent cherishes you." And when Menippus expressed his surprise, he added, "For this lady is of a kind you cannot marry. Why should you? Do you think that she loves you?" "Indeed I do," said the youth, "since she behaves to me as if she loves me." "And would you then marry her?" said Apollonius. "Why, yes, for it would be delightful to marry a woman who loves you." Thereupon Apollonius asked when the wedding was to be. "Perhaps tomorrow," said the other, "for it brooks no delay." Apollonius therefore waited for the occasion of the wedding breakfast, and then, presenting himself before the guests who had just arrived, he said, "Where is the dainty lady at whose instance ye come?" "Here she is," replied Menippus, and at the same moment he rose slightly from his seat, blushing. "And to which of you belong the silver and gold, and all the rest of the decorations of the banqueting hall?" "To the lady," replied the youth, "for this is all I have of my own," pointing to the philosopher's cloak which he wore. And Apollonius said, "Have you heard of the gardens of Tantalus? How they exist, and yet do not exist?" "Yes," they answered, "in the poems of Homer, for we certainly never went down to Hades." "As such," replied Apollonius, "you must regard this adornment, for it is not reality, but the semblance of reality. And that you may realize the truth of what I say, this fine bride is one of the vampires. That is to say, of those beings whom the many regard as lamias and hobgoblins. These beings fall in love, and they are devoted to the delights of Aphrodite, but especially to the flesh of human beings, and they decoy with such delights those whom they mean to devour in their feasts. And the lady said, "Cease your ill-omened talk, and be gone." And she pretended to be disgusted at what she heard, and no doubt she was inclined to rail at philosophers, and say that they always talk nonsense. When, however, the goblets of gold and the show of silver were proved as light as air, and all fluttered away out of their sight, while the wine-bearers and the cooks and all the retinue of servants vanished before the rebukes of Apollonius, the phantom pretended to weep, and prayed him not to torture her, nor to compel her to confess what she really was. But Apollonius insisted and would not let her off. And then she admitted that she was a vampire, and was fattening up Menippus with pleasures before devouring his body. For it was her habit to feed upon young and beautiful bodies, because their blood is pure and strong. I have related at length, because it was necessary to do so. This is the best-known story of Apollonius, for many people are aware of it, and know that the incident occurred in the center of Hellas. But they have only heard in a general and vague manner that he once caught and overcame a Lamia in Corinth. But they have never learned what she was about, nor that he did it to save Menippus. But I owe my own account to Damis, and to the work which he wrote.
Damis, or Damis, is supposed to have been a disciple of Apollonius, but scholars conclude there is little evidence for his actual historical existence. Nevertheless, the stories seem to have been passed along for centuries. The nature and identity of demons in the non-apocalyptic Jewish writings of the imperial period. In this exploration of the intriguing world of daemons, or demons, as they're sometimes known, we venture into the heart of non-apocalyptic Jewish literature from the imperial period. Our journey begins with a foundation in scripture, specifically two pivotal texts from the Septuagint that cast light on these enigmatic beings: the mysterious account of Genesis 6, 1-4, and the captivating narrative found in Tobit 6, 1-8-9. From there, we delve into the writings of Jewish scholars and historians of the Greco-Roman era, including the philosophical musings of Philo, the historical accounts of Josephus, and the legal discussions in the Mishnah. These texts provide us with perspectives on the nature and function of demons, in Jewish thought, offering insights into how these beings were perceived, their roles within the cosmos, and their interactions with humanity. Our exploration then takes a dramatic turn with two riveting stories of demon expulsion. The first is drawn from the Genesis Apocryphon, offering a glimpse into the ancient narratives that expanded upon the canonical scriptures. The second account comes from Josephus, whose writings bridge the gap between history and legend, providing a unique viewpoint on the practice of exorcism within the Jewish tradition of his time. Through this comprehensive examination, we aim to shed light on the multifaceted roles that demons played in Jewish thought and society during the imperial period, tracing their evolution from scriptural entities to characters in the broader cultural and religious landscape of the Greco-Roman world. Scripture. The sons of God unite with human women who give birth to giants. The sons of God went in to the daughters of humans who bore children to them. These were the heroes that were of old, warriors of renown.
When people began to multiply on the face of the ground, and daughters were born to them, too, the sons of God saw that they were fair, and they took wives for themselves of all they chose. 3. Then the Lord said, "My spirit shall not abide in mortals forever, for they are flesh. Their days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went into the daughters of humans, who bore children to them. These were the heroes that were of old, warriors of renown."
The intriguing reference to half-breeds in these ancient texts sparks a fascinating discussion especially within the context of Hellenistic Judaism's staunch monotheism. These beings, though not identified as daemons or demons, emerge from narratives mentioning the sons of God, a concept that intriguingly blurs the lines between the divine and the mortal. This notion introduces the idea of beings that occupy a liminal space between humanity and the singular deity of monotheistic belief, a theme that both captivates and challenges traditional interpretations. As we delve deeper, it becomes clear that these stories are not just ancient myths. They are the precursors to a more complex theological discourse that would later flourish in apocalyptic literature. These stories of extraordinary beings lay the groundwork for the future narratives, creating a base upon which the intricate world of apocalyptic visions will be intricately crafted. In the upcoming documentary, we will explore how this narrative thread is picked up and expanded in apocalyptic writings, highlighting the enduring fascination with the nature of beings that exist in the shadowy realm between the human and the divine. Tobit exorcises the demon who has killed the 7 former husbands of his new wife, and Angel Raphael instructs Tobias that smoked fish, heart, and liver will exorcise a demon.
Tobit 6191. The young man. Tobias went out, and the angel went with him. 2. And the dog came out with him, and went along with them. So they both journeyed along. And when the first night overtook them, they camped by the Tigris River. 3. Then the young man went down to wash his feet in the Tigris River. Suddenly a large fish leapt up from the water and tried to swallow the young man's foot, and he cried out. 4. But the angel said to the young man, "Catch hold of the fish and hang on to it." So the young man grasped the fish and drew it up on the land. 5. Then the angel said to him, "Cut open the fish and take out its gall, heart, and liver. Keep them with you, but throw away the intestines. For its gall, heart, and liver are useful as medicine." 6. So after cutting open the fish, the young man gathered together the gall, heart, and liver. Then he roasted and ate some of the fish, and kept some to be salted. The two continued on their way together until they were near Media. 7. Then the young man questioned the angel and said to him, "Brother Azariah, what medicinal value is there in the fish's heart and liver and in the gall?" 8. He replied, "As for the fish's heart and liver, you must burn them to make a smoke in the presence of a man or woman afflicted by a demon or evil spirit, and every affliction will flee away and never remain with that person any longer." 9. And as for the gall, anoint a person's eyes where white films have appeared on them. Blow upon them, upon the white films, and the eyes will be healed.
Raphael instructs Tobias how to exorcise the demon who killed his betrothed's 7 husbands.
Tobit 6-10, 18:10. When he entered Media and already was approaching Ecbatana. 11. Raphael the angel said to the young man, "Brother Tobias." "Here I am," he answered. Then Raphael said to him, "We must stay this night in the home of Raguel. He is your relative, and he has a daughter named Sarah." 12. He has no male heir and no daughter except Sarah only. And you, as next of kin to her, have before all other men a hereditary claim on her. Also, it is right for you to inherit her father's possessions. Moreover, the girl is sensible, brave, and very beautiful, and her father is a good man. 13. He continued, "You have every right to take her in marriage. So listen to me, brother. Tonight I will speak to her father about the girl so that we may take her to be your bride. When we return from Rages, we will celebrate her marriage. For I know that Raguel can by no means keep her from you, or promise her to another man without incurring the penalty of death, according to the decree of the book of Moses." 14. Then Tobias said in answer to Raphael, "Brother Azariah, I have heard that she already has been married to 7 husbands, and that they died in the bridal chamber. On the night when they went into her, they would die. I have heard people saying that it was a demon that killed them." 15. It does not harm her, but it kills anyone who desires to approach her. So now, since I am the only son my father has, I am afraid that I may die and bring my father's and mother's life down to their grave, grieving for me, and they have no other son to bury them." 16. But Raphael said to him, "Do you not remember your father's orders when he commanded you to take a wife from your father's house? Now listen to me, brother, and say no more about this demon. Take her. I know that this very night she will be given to you in marriage. 17. When you enter the bridal chamber, take some of the fish's liver and heart and put them on the embers of the incense. An odor will be given off. 18. The demon will smell it and flee and will never be seen near her anymore. Now, when you're about to go to bed with her, both of you must first stand up and pray, imploring the Lord of heaven that mercy and safety may be granted to you. Do not be afraid, for she was set apart for you before the world was made. You will save her, and she will go with you. I presume that you will have children by her, and they will be as brothers to you. Now say no more. When Tobias heard the words of Raphael and learned that she was his kinswoman, related through his father's lineage, he loved her very much, and his heart was drawn to her. The marriage is proposed, and the contract is written out and sealed, and a dinner is prepared. Tobit 7, 9, 15.
Tobias obediently follows Raphael's instructions.
Tobit 7, 15, 8, 9, 15. Raguel called his wife Edna and said to her, "Sister, get the other room ready and take her there." 16. So she went and made the bed in the room as he had told her and brought Sarah there. She wept for her daughter. Then, wiping away the tears, she said to her, "Take courage, my daughter. The Lord of heaven grant you joy in place of your sorrow. Take courage, my daughter." Then she went out. 8:1. When they had finished eating and drinking, they wanted to retire. So they took the young man and brought him into the bedroom. 2. Then Tobias remembered the words of Raphael, and he took the fish's liver and heart out of the bag where he had them and put them on the embers of the incense. 3. The odor of the fish so repelled the demon that he fled to the remotest parts of Egypt. But Raphael followed him and at once bound him there hand and foot. 4. When the parents had gone out and shut the door of the room, Tobias got out of bed and said to Sarah, "Sister, get up and let us pray and implore our Lord that he grant us mercy and safety." 5. So she got up, and they began to pray and implore that they might be kept safe. Tobias began by saying, "Blessed are you, O God of our ancestors, and blessed is your name in all generations forever." 6. You made Adam, and for him you made his wife Eve as a helper and support. From the two of them, the human race has sprung. You said, "It is not good that the man should be alone. Let us make a helper for him like himself." 7. I now am taking this kinswoman of mine, not because of lust, but with sincerity. Grant that she and I may find mercy, and that we may grow old together. 8. And they both said, "Amen, amen." 9. Then they went to sleep for the night.
When we compare the evidence of the ideas about demons in this account with the sort of concepts we find in Plutarch, one noticeable difference is in the clear and separate category given to the angels. In Plutarch's treatment, good and evil are both called daimons, as we have seen. In this account, the angels seem to belong to a special group, and their names plainly identify them as messengers. In fact, the angel Raphael could be an embodiment of the good daimons in Plutarch. He serves God, acting as a messenger, a unifier, and a prophet in oracles. In this story, the good daemon, Raphael, acts as an oracle to the obedient Tobit against the bad daemon. A second important difference is the explicit demand for prayer. It is not the technique alone that will ensure the expulsion of the demon, but the technique accompanied by a sincere appeal to the merciful God. Philo, 30 BCE to 45 CE. Navigating through Philo's evolving thoughts on demons is a bit like watching a philosophical saga unfold across 3 captivating acts. As detailed by the keen observations of Dr. Frederick Brink, let's break down this intellectual journey into its thrilling parts. In the opening act, Philo introduces us to a world where angels, or as he intriguingly calls them, daimones psychiae, flit through the air like incorporeal human souls on a celestial ballet. It's a vision where the boundaries between the ethereal and the human soul are as thin as gossamer, setting the stage for a narrative rich with spiritual intrigue. As the plot thickens in the second act, Philo begins to blend genres, Here, angels still dance as daimones psyche, but they've been upgraded to logoi, status. Think of them as divine messengers carrying cosmic wisdom. It's a transitional phase where Philo's thinking starts to shift gears, paving the way for a grand philosophical pivot. And then, in the climatic third act, Philo takes a bold leap into a realm where angels are no longer just ethereal beings, but embodied logoi, essentially divine inspirations or good thoughts. It's a dramatic departure from traditional demonology, where demons were often seen as sources of inspiration at best. Philo redefines the narrative, positioning these entities not as external influencers, but as embodiments of divine wisdom. One of Philo's most intriguing plot twists occur in his treatment of Genesis 6, 1-4. In his work On the Giants, here, he interprets the tale of celestial beings mingling with mortals not as a lurid tabloid headline of ancient mythology, but as a symbolic exploration of the soul's descent into the corporeal realm of fleshly concerns. Philo isn't in the business of adding mythical creatures to the scriptural cast. Instead, he sees the narrative as an allegory for the journey of heavenly souls into human experience, debunking fears of fantastical hybrid beings. Philo's perspective is that the cosmos is a producer of souls, with the air churning out spirits as naturally as Earth sprouts flora. These souls might linger in the celestial realms, basking in their consecrated status, or dive into the human saga, enriching it with their divine essence, but always remaining distinct from the fantastical hybrids of lore. Some souls descend into bodies, and some become consecrated for the service of God. These earthly souls can become immersed in superficial concerns, or soar to heaven through philosophy.
Philo on the Giants. Now some of the souls have descended into bodies, but others have never deigned to be brought into union with any of the parts of the earth. They are consecrated and devoted to the service of the Father and Creator, whose wont it is to employ them as ministers and helpers, to have charge and care of mortal man. But the others, descending into the body as though into a stream, have sometimes been caught in the swirl of its rushing torrent, and swallowed up thereby. At other times have been able to stem the current, have risen to the surface, and then soared upwards, back to the place from whence they came. These last, then, are the souls of those who have given themselves to genuine philosophy, who from first to last study, to die to the life in the body, that a higher existence immortal and incorporeal, in the presence of him who is himself immortal and uncreate, may be their portion. But the souls which have sunk beneath the stream are the souls of the others who have held no count of wisdom. They have abandoned themselves to the unstable things of chance, none of which has aught to do with our noblest part, the soul or mind, but all are related to that dead thing which was our birth fellow, the body, or to objects more lifeless still, glory, wealth, and offices and honors, and all other illusions which, like images or pictures, are created through the deceit of false opinion by those who have never gazed upon true beauty.
It is a superstitious idea to imagine that bad daemons are a special species distinct from good daemons. The difference between them is in unfaithfulness to a previous divine consecration, not a difference in species.
Philo on the Giants. So if you realize that souls and demons, daimonas, and angels are but different names for the same one underlying object, you will cast from you that most grievous burden, the fear of demons or superstition. The common usage of men is to give the name of demon daimonas to bad and good demons alike, and the name of soul psychers to good and bad souls. And so too, you also will not go wrong if you reckon as angels, not only those who are worthy of the name, who are as ambassadors backwards and forwards between men and God, and are rendered sacred and inviolate by reason of that glorious and blameless ministry, but also those who are unholy and unworthy of the title.
The contribution that both Josephus and Philo bring to our efforts to reconstruct ideas available to people living in Greco-Roman antiquity is that spirits are to be expected just as surely as one knows of the existence of air or wind. Second, These creatures are intelligent and make choices, rather than being by nature only capable of good or only capable of evil. Third, the soul within a person longs for spiritual life, and one must beware of sinking into the mire of the physical. Josephus, 70 to 90 CE. Josephus aligns with the prevailing Greco-Roman perspectives on spirits, as highlighted by Everett Ferguson's analysis in Demonology of the Early Christian World. In his use of the term daemon, Josephus applies it broadly to encompass divine power, destiny, and the forces behind misfortune, as well as explicitly evil entities. Ferguson points out that Josephus specifies when a daemon represents a benevolent force by attaching the qualifier good to it. This nuanced approach reflects the complexity of spiritual beliefs in Josephus's time, where spirits could embody a wide range of roles, from divine agents and arbiters of fate to malevolent forces, with the distinction of their nature made clear through descriptive adjectives. The so-called demons are spirits of wicked men. The root of the plant baris is used to expel demons.
Josephus, Jewish war, flame-colored and towards evening emitting a brilliant light. Yet the plant baris eludes the grasp of persons who approach with the intention of plucking it, as it shrinks up and can only be made to stand still by pouring upon it certain secretions of the human body. Yet even then, to touch it is fatal, unless one succeeds in carrying off the root itself, suspended from the hand. With all these attendant risks, it possesses one virtue for which it is prized. For the so-called demons, in other words, the spirits of wicked men which enter the living and kill them, unless aid is forthcoming, are promptly expelled by this root, if merely applied to the patients.
And God granted him, Solomon, knowledge of the art used against demons, daimonion, for the benefit and healing of people.
Josephus, Jewish Antiquities. There was no form of nature with which he, King Solomon, was not acquainted, or which he passed over without examining, but he studied them all philosophically, and revealed the most complete knowledge of their several properties. And God granted him knowledge of the art used against demons, daimonion, for the benefit and healing of men. He also composed incantations by which illnesses are relieved, and left behind forms of exorcisms, with which those possessed by demons drive them out, never to return.
3 concepts about the nature and identity of demons. 1. Successful exorcism is joined to erudition. Josephus claims that Solomon had probed the understanding of the phenomenon of possession philosophically. God grants knowledge of the art. The association of exorcism with specialized study backs up Plutarch's scholarly discussion of the nature of daemons within the larger cosmology. This underlines the fact that one may not assume that possession and exorcism were universally regarded as superstitious and low class by men of letters in antiquity. 2. Josephus explains exorcism as a type of healing. This means that when exorcisms occur in the Christian material, they cannot be assumed to imply the beginning of Satan's downfall or of an imminent end time. 3. Successful exorcisms require the knowledge of efficacious forms so that the demons do not return. The notion that Solomon left this legacy provides an honorable context for the exorcism stories attached to important Jewish figures. Thus, any hint of magic in a pejorative sense is dispelled. Mishnah and the nature and identity of evil spirits. The Mishnah, a cornerstone of Jewish rabbinic literature, was codified around 190 CE, making it a significant post-New Testament text that aimed to solidify emerging rabbinic teachings. Despite its official compilation in the late 2nd century, much of its content is acknowledged to have originated well before that time, reflecting a continuity of Jewish thought and practice. Within the Mishnah, the acknowledgement of demons illustrates the integration of spiritual beliefs into Jewish life and law. 3 specific passages highlight this acknowledgement. Pirkei Avot 5:6. This section, part of a collection of ethical teachings, references demons in a context that underscores the broader spiritual and moral universe within which these teachings were meant to be applied. Shabbat 2.5. Here the discussion involves Sabbath laws where the mention of demons may relate to the intricacies of observing religious commandments in a world perceived as filled with both seen and unseen forces. Erubin 4.1. This passage, dealing with the laws of Eruvin, or the mixing of domains, on the Sabbath, similarly reflects an awareness of the spiritual dimension's impact on daily and religious life. These references to demons in the Mishnah not only attest to the belief in such beings, but also highlight how spiritual understandings were woven into the fabric of Jewish legal and ethical discourse. They reveal a world where the spiritual and material coexisted, influencing how laws were interpreted and ethical life was conceived. The evil spirits were created on the eve of the Sabbath.
Pirkei Avot. 10 things were created on the eve of the Sabbath, between the suns at nightfall: the mouth of the earth, the mouth of the well, the mouth of the Shias, the rainbow, and the manna, and the rod, and the shamir, the letters, and the writing, and the tables of stone. Some say also the evil spirits and the sepulchre of Moses and the ram of Abraham our father. Some say also the tongs made with tongs.
Because evil spirits are attracted to a light, the Sabbath lamp may be extinguished if one fears an evil spirit is near.
Shabbat. If a man put out the lamp on the night of the Sabbath from fear of the Gentiles or of thieves or of an evil spirit, or to suffer one that was sick to sleep, he is not culpable. But if he did it with a mind to spare the lamp, or to spare the oil, or to spare the wick, he is culpable. But our Jose declares him exempt in every case, excepting that of the wick, since he thereby forms charcoal.
Evil spirits have power to transport a person from one place to another.
Erubin 4.133. If a man was taken out beyond the Sabbath limit by Gentiles or an evil spirit, he may only move within 4 cubits. If they brought him back again, it is as though he had never gone out. If they brought him to another town, or set him in a cattle pen or a cattle fold, Rabban Gamaliel and our Eliezer B. Azariah say, he may traverse their whole area. But our Joshua and our Akiba say, he may only move within 4 cubits. It happened when they came from Brundisium, and when their ship was sailing in the sea, that Rabban Gamaliel and our Eleazar B. Azariah walked the whole length of the ship. But our Joshua and our Akiba did not stir beyond 4 cubits, since they were minded to apply to themselves the more stringent ruling.
These 3 texts then signal some common traditions about the nature and character of the demons, such as we have seen in the non-Jewish texts. Pirkei Avot 5.6 shows that some Jewish communities do regard evil spirits as a hybrid species rather than the singular pure beings, the angels or souls of Philo. Sabbath and Erubin suggest that living with demons is as possible a danger as living subject to Gentiles. When we find Torah prescriptions that deal with observance in the face of Gentile or demon interference, we have a sign that the community expects both Gentiles and demons to feature in ordinary life. What we do not find is any evidence that the community sees these demons as the lackeys of any great identifiable demon lord such as Beelzebul or Belial, nor is there any reference to the coming end when these demons will be punished by God's avenging angels. In other words, the apocalyptic themes and expectations do not seem to be present in the treatment of demonic interference with ordinary Jewish life. Rather, the sense of the demon as a creature of the liminal space between the divine and the human, and capable of bringing grief to humans, is what we find, as we do in the speech of Plutarch's Cleombrotus. So in this way, the Mishnah reflects the more general ideas of demons in the Greco-Roman world, rather than echoing the organization of demonic and angelic armies and the organization of time that we find so prominently in apocalyptic documents. Evil, spirit, demon, stories from Jewish sources in Greco-Roman antiquity, Qumran documents, the Genesis Apocryphon. The Genesis Apocryphon, found among the Qumran documents, offers a fascinating glimpse into Jewish beliefs about demons during the Greco-Roman period. This text, often described as a Little Genesis due to its embellished retellings of Genesis narratives, dates between 50 BCE and 70 CE. J.C. Trevor highlights its similarities in character and content to the Book of Jubilees, suggesting a shared cultural or religious backdrop that enriched the patriarchal legends with vivid details and dramatic flair. In particular, column 20 of the Genesis Apocryphon revisits the story from Genesis 12:10 through 20, featuring Abraham's expulsion of a demon. This incident, while not found in the canonical Hebrew Bible, provides valuable insight into how the community responsible for the Genesis Apocryphon perceived demons. Through Abram's confrontation with an evil spirit, we glimpse the beliefs and practices related to demonic forces at the time, including the notion that such beings could interact with and influence the human realm, and that righteous individuals possessed the authority or ability to expel these malevolent entities. This story and others like it from the Qumran text underscores a broader Jewish understanding of the spiritual world in which demons were a real and present danger. The ability to expel a demon, as demonstrated by Abram, reflects a belief in the power of faith and righteousness to overcome evil influences, a theme that resonates with Jewish exorcist traditions and the broader cultural milieu of Greco-Roman antiquity. Genesis 12:10 through 20.
10. Now there was a famine in the land. So Abram went down to Egypt to reside there as an alien, for the famine was severe in the land. 11. When he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, I know well that you are a woman beautiful in appearance. 12. And when the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Then they will kill me, but they will let you live. 13. Say you are my sister, that it may go well with me because of you, and that my life may be spared on your account. 14. When Abram entered Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. 15. When the officials of Pharaoh saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. 16. And for her sake he dealt well with Abram, and he had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male and female slaves, female donkeys, and camels. 17. But the Lord afflicted Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. 18. So Pharaoh called Abram and said, What is this you have done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? 19. Why did you say, She is my sister, so that I took her for my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and be gone. 20. And Pharaoh gave men orders concerning him, and they set him on the way with his wife and all that he had.
Having lied to Pharaoh that Sarah is his sister, Abram calls on God to prevent Pharaoh from having relations with her.
Genesis Apocryphon. The beauty of Sarah is praised by the Pharaoh's servants. When the king heard the words of Hyrcanos and the words of his two companions, for the three of them spoke as one man, he coveted her very much. He sent off in haste and had her brought to him. When he beheld her, he marveled at all her beauty, and took her to himself as a wife. He sought to kill me, Abram, but Sarai said to the king, He is my brother, so that I might be benefited by her. And I, Abram, was spared because of her. I was not killed, but I wept bitterly. I, Abram, and Lot, my nephew, with me, on the night when Sarai was taken away from me by force. That night I prayed, I entreated, and I asked for mercy. In my sorrow, I said as my tears ran down my cheeks, Blessed are you, O God Most High, my Lord for all ages. For you are Lord and Master over all, and have power to mete out justice to all the kings of the earth. Now I lodge my complaint with you, my Lord, against the Pharaoh Zoan, the king of Egypt, because my wife has been taken away from me by force. Mete out justice to him for me, and show forth your great hand against him and against all his house. May he not be able to defile my wife tonight, that it may be known about you, my Lord, that you are the Lord of all the kings of the earth. And I wept and talked to no one.
The Lord sends a pestilential spirit to afflict Pharaoh and all the men of his household for the next 2 years.
Genesis Apocryphon. But that night, God Most High sent him a pestilential spirit to afflict him, and all the men of his household, an evil spirit that kept afflicting him, and all the men of his household. He was not able to approach her, nor did he have intercourse with her, though he was with her for 2 years. At the end of 2 years, the plagues and afflictions became more severe and more intense for him and all the men of his household.
When Pharaoh calls on all the wise men, physicians, magicians to cure him, and the spirit afflicts them too, he turns to Abram as he has been led to do by a dream.
Genesis Apocryphon. So he sent for all the wise men of Egypt, all the magicians, and all the physicians of Egypt, to see if they could cure him of this plague, and the men of his household. But none of the physicians, the magicians, nor any of the wise men were able to rise up and cure him, for the spirit afflicted all of them, too, and they fled. Then Hyrcanus came to me and begged me to come and pray over the king, and lay my hands upon him that he might be cured, for he had seen me in a dream.
When Lot explains that Abram cannot pray for Pharaoh while Abram's wife is still with him, Pharaoh upbraids Abram for his lie and gives her to Abram.
Genesis Apocryphon. But Lot said to him, Abram my uncle cannot pray for the king, while his wife Sarai is with him. Now go, tell the king that he should send his wife away from him, back to her own husband. Then he, Abram, will pray for him, that he might be cured. When Hyrcanus heard Lot's words, he went and said to the king, All these plagues and afflictions with which my lord the king is beset and afflicted are due to Sarai, the wife of Abram. Let Sarai be returned to her husband Abram, and this plague will depart from you, as well as the spirit of purulence. So he, the Pharaoh, summoned me to him and said to me, What have you done to me for Sarai's sake, in telling me she is my sister, when she was really your wife, and I took her to be my wife? Here is your wife, take her away. Go, depart from all the provinces of Egypt. But now pray for me and for my household, that this evil spirit may be commanded to depart from us.
Abram lays hand on Pharaoh's head, and the evil spirit is commanded to depart.
Apocryphon. So I prayed for that, and I laid my hands upon his head. The plague was removed from him, and the evil spirit was commanded to depart from him, and he was cured. And the king rose and made known to me. And the king swore an oath to me that he had not touched her. And then they brought Sarai to me. The king gave her much silver and gold, many garments of fine linen and purple. And he laid them before her, and Hagar too. He handed her over to me, and appointed men to escort me out of Egypt. So I, Abram, went forth with very many flocks, and with silver and gold too, and I went up from Egypt. Lot, my brother's son, was with me, and Lot, too, had acquired many flocks. He had taken for himself a wife from the daughters of Egypt.
In this story, the evil spirit is not presented as being who is rebellious to God, but rather one obedient to his commands. It is not a ghost, but a separate spiritual being meant to serve God. In this way, the ideas cohere with those of Plutarch, who see daimons as capable of good or evil. In this case, the evil spirit fulfills the role of meting out justice on God's behalf. While the evil spirit brings trouble to Pharaoh and his servants, his service is to help Abraham. Thus, the evil description is really relative to the situation and people involved. Notice that just as the demon is sent by God, so too he is commanded to leave by God. Thus, although Abram is said to lay hands on Pharaoh, it is clear that the narrator does not want it to be understood that Abram exerts direct authority over the demon. His laying on of the hands becomes part of his sincere prayer to God, so the demon is ordered to depart. Josephus. King Saul is exorcised from his demons by David, and against that trouble caused by the evil spirits, whensoever they assailed him, he had no other physician than David, who by singing his songs and playing upon the harp restored Saul to himself.
Antiquities of the Jews. So after these exhortations to the youth David, Samuel went his way, and the deity abandoned Saul and passed over to David, who, when the divine spirit had removed to him, began to prophesy. But as for Saul, he was beset by strange disorders and evil spirits to daimonia, which caused him such suffocation and strangling that the physicians could devise no other remedy save to order search, to be made for one with power to charm away spirits and to play upon the harp. And whensoever the evil spirit should assail and torment Saul, to have him stand over the king and strike the strings and chant his songs. Saul did not neglect this advice, but ordered search to be made for such a man. And when one of those present said that he had seen in the city of Bethlehem a son of Jesse, a mere boy in years, but of pleasing and fair appearance, and in other ways worthy of regard, who was, moreover, skilled in playing on the harp and in the singing of songs, and an excellent soldier, Saul sent to Jesse and ordered him to take David from the flocks and send him to him. He wished, he said, to see the young man, having heard of his comeliness and valor. So Jesse sent his son, also giving him presents to carry to Saul. When he came, Saul was delighted with him, made him his armor-bearer, and held him in the highest honor. For his illness was charmed away by him, and against that trouble caused by the evil spirits, whensoever they assailed him. He had no other physician than David, who, by singing his songs and playing upon the harp, restored Saul to himself. He accordingly sent to Jesse, the lad's father, desiring him to leave David with him, since the sight of the boy and his presence gave him pleasure. Jesse would not gainsay Saul, but permitted him to keep David.
Here, Josephus represents the story of David bringing peace of mind as a kind of constant exorcism by his powerful charm. The method is just to sing songs and play the harp, no incantations or spells. The singing and playing is sufficient to cause the demons to leave. Josephus is speaking to pagans who are obviously prepared to understand a story such as this. And Josephus presumes that this explanation of David's singing and playing will be seen as credible and a very good explanation for Saul's feeling better. Evil spirits bring great disturbance to mind and spirit. The text calls David a physician. Exorcism of this type, if it brings wholeness to the patient's health, is the job of a doctor. So Josephus calls exorcism a healing. For the Romans, these songs would have had the power of the well-known Carmen. Eleazar, the Pharisee, 70 to 90 CE, draws on Solomon's methods for exorcisms. We have been induced to speak of these things in order that all may know the greatness of Solomon's nature and how God favored him.
Josephus' Antiquities, and this kind of cure. Solomon's forms of exorcisms is a very great power among us to this day, for I have seen a certain Eleazar, a countryman of mine, Josephus, in the presence of Vespasian, his sons, tribunes, and a number of other soldiers, free men possessed by demons. And this was the manner of the cure. He put to the nose of the possessed man a ring which had under its seal one of the roots prescribed by Solomon, and then, as the man smelled it, drew out the demon through his nostrils, and, when the man at once fell down, adjured the demon never to come back into him, speaking Solomon's name and reciting the incantations which he had composed. Then, wishing to convince the bystanders and prove to them that he had this power, Eleazar placed a cup or foot basin full of water a little way off, and commanded the demon, as it went out of the man, to overturn it and make known to the spectators that he had left the man. And when this was done, the understanding and wisdom of Solomon were clearly revealed, on account of which we have been induced to speak of these things, in order that all men may know the greatness of his Solomon's nature, and how God favored him, and that no one under the sun may be ignorant of the king's surpassing virtue of every kind.
Notice that Eleazar gets the demon to behave so that he can prove to his audience how efficacious his power is. This is what we see also in Apollonius's exorcism of the young dandy. Both Philostratus and Josephus show that a listening audience appreciates some proof that demons are indeed present and are subject to the hero. Next, apocalyptic exorcisms. Demons and exorcisms were all over the Roman world at the time. While Jews attributed these magical exorcisms in a long tradition spanning back to Solomon, Christians to Jesus, The Roman world had a long tradition of daemons from Homer and Hesiod. Various sources like Plutarch's description of daemons, Celsus' criticisms of Jesus' miracles and exorcisms being from Egyptian sorcerers and charlatans, Apollonius of Madara being accused of possession through magic, Lucian Syrian from Palestine, Apollonius of Tyana, Eleazar, Solomon, David, Abram, Tobias. We see a well-established exorcism tradition with Jewish and Christian religious scenes forming to the cosmology of the day in the Roman world. The shift towards all demons being evil in the Judeo-Christian tradition and daemons being both good and evil from the Greco-Roman tradition is a blast to recognize. I find the comparison between Apollonius of Tyana, a late 1st century exorcist and Son of God, to be a great comparison to Jesus and the competing figures of this period. I hope one will walk away better informed on the topic of demons and see that Christianity doesn't have a monopoly on exorcisms. Thanks to Dr. Wendy Cotter's book for these primary sources. Make sure you get a copy of that wonderful book for all of the sources. Please comment below your thoughts about this video. Like the video. Join our family, our YouTube memberships, as well as our Patreon. We could really use the help. We are starting to do monthly Zoom meetings for paid members of both the Myth Vision. Become part of the family today. Oh, and never forget, we are Myth Vision.